His own attorneys don't dispute it. If Laci Peterson died on December 23, 2002, the date the prosecution built its entire case around, then Scott Peterson is the only person who could have killed her. That's the date a state expert gave a jury in 2004. It's the date that sent a man to death row. And in a filing submitted to the San Mateo County Superior Court, Peterson's current lawyers put a doctor on record, saying the method used to calculate that date relied on decades-old ultrasound research. Research, they argue, no longer holds up. Move that date by even one day, and the only man who could have done it stops being the only man who could have done it. 22 years, one conviction, one date, and in 2026 that date is the thing being fought over. The prosecution never found a body at a crime scene, never determined a cause of death, never recovered a murder weapon. No one ever saw Scott Peterson kill his wife. A jury convicted him anyway, on circumstance alone. Whether that circumstance was enough is a question this case has never stopped asking. December 24, 2002, Modesto, California. Scott Peterson told police he left home that morning while Laci watched television. He said he drove 90 miles to Berkeley Marina to fish alone. He'd bought the boat weeks earlier. He came home that evening. She wasn't there. Laci's mother called it in. Within hours, Modesto had a search underway. Within days, it had thousands of volunteers combing fields and canals for a 27-year-old woman, 8 months pregnant, due in 6 weeks. And within weeks, it had a husband under suspicion. Detectives learned Peterson had been seeing a Fresno massage therapist named Amber Frey since November, a month before Laci vanished. They learned about the freshly purchased boat, the life insurance policy, the story that kept shifting in small ways each time he told it. But there was something else in the file, something that got far less airtime for the next 2 decades. On that same Christmas Eve, a house directly across the street from the Petersons' home was broken into. Burglars were caught. One of them would later tell investigators something the defense has spent 20 years trying to get in front of a jury, and prosecutors have spent 20 years trying to keep out. That burglar claimed he saw a pregnant woman matching Laci's description, walking in the neighborhood, after the time Scott Peterson said he'd already left for the marina. If true, it means Laci was alive after her husband was 90 miles away. It's one of 14 claims at the center of the 2025 petition. It's also one of the claims a judge has now rejected as procedurally barred, meaning she ruled the defense couldn't raise it now, not that she ruled it false. Amber Frey didn't know Scott Peterson was married until Laci was already missing. Once she found out, she went to police and let them wire her phone. For weeks, she recorded her calls with him. In one of those calls, made before Laci was ever reported missing, Peterson told Frey he'd lost his wife, and that he'd be spending New Year's in Paris. He was in Modesto. His wife was gone. He hadn't told police yet that anything was wrong. The prosecution built its motive on that single contradiction. A man with a pregnant wife, an unborn son on the way, and a girlfriend who thought he was free. Freedom, they argued, was the motive. The affair didn't require Laci's death, but it gave him a reason to want it. The defense's answer was simple, and it's still the defense's answer today. Men have affairs without murdering their wives. An affair is evidence of a bad husband. It is not evidence of a killer. Both can be true. Only one of them is a crime. April 13, 2003. A dog walker near Point Isabel in Richmond found partial remains on the shore of San Francisco Bay. The next day, more remains surfaced nearby. Dental records and DNA confirmed what Modesto had feared for 4 months: Laci and her unborn son. 1 mile. That's roughly the distance between where the remains washed ashore and where Scott Peterson told police he'd been fishing on Christmas Eve. But 4 months in salt water leaves almost nothing behind. No cause of death could be established, not strangulation, not blunt trauma, not a single mark that told a coroner how either of them died. The prosecution would go to trial unable to say how Laci Peterson was killed, where she was killed, or exactly when. 5 days after the remains were identified, Peterson was arrested near the Mexican border. His hair was dyed blonde. He had roughly $15,000 in cash, multiple cell phones, and his brother's identification in the car. No cause of death, no crime scene, no murder weapon, no eyewitness to a killing. That is what the Stanislaus County District Attorney's Office walked into a Redwood City courtroom with in 2004. Venue changed from Modesto after the coverage made a local jury impossible to seat. What they built instead was a structure of circumstance, the affair as motive, the bodies surfacing near his fishing spot, the hair dye, the cash, the phones, the drive toward the border, behavior the state argued belonged to a man preparing to run. A $250,000 life insurance policy taken out on Laci months earlier. Homemade concrete anchors found in his warehouse, which prosecutors said were built to weigh a body down. A dog-eared page in his boating manual, marking a passage about currents in the bay. None of it on its own proves a murder. Put together, a jury found it proved this one. The defense argued every piece could be read differently, that a distant husband dyeing his hair after becoming the most hated man in America isn't the same as a killer fleeing the country, that a fishing trip near where a body later surfaced is coincidence in a bay that empties into the ocean, that concrete anchors in a landscaper's warehouse aren't unusual. On November 12, 2004, the jury convicted Scott Peterson of first-degree murder in Laci's death and second-degree murder in Connor's. In March of 2005, they recommended death. The death sentence didn't survive review. In 2020, the California Supreme Court overturned it, citing juror misconduct during the penalty phase. In 2021, Peterson was resentenced. Life without parole, the conviction itself untouched. Then in January of 2024, the Los Angeles Innocence Project, the organization behind dozens of overturned wrongful convictions in California, took up his case. In August of 2025, they filed his third habeas petition. 14 separate claims. The word their filing used was eviscerates. Among those claims, the DNA request. A blood-stained mattress pulled from a burned-out van found near the Peterson home the morning after Laci disappeared had been tested for DNA twice before, in 2013 and again in 2019, with no usable results. In 2024, Peterson's lawyers asked a judge to allow modern retesting on it, arguing the earlier tests had only examined a small fraction of the fabric. The judge said no to the mattress. She allowed new testing on exactly one item from the entire request, a 15.5-inch strip of duct tape recovered from Laci's pants at autopsy. The mattress question, unresolved, went into the 2025 petition anyway. Then there's the date. At trial, the state's expert, Dr. Gregory DeVore, testified that Connor's gestational development placed his death at 33 weeks and 1 day, December 23rd. The 2025 petition puts forward a different doctor, arguing that gestational aging science has moved on since the research Dr. DeVore relied on, and that the actual date of death may have been later, days after Peterson was already on record elsewhere with witnesses. If the doctor is right, the man convicted because he was the only one who could have done it on December 23rd was, provably, not the only one who could have done it on whatever day it actually happened. On April 28, 2026, Judge Elizabeth Hill issued her order. In a ruling that ran past 100 pages, she rejected all 14 claims, most of them, she found, procedurally barred, meaning the law didn't allow her to reconsider them at this stage regardless of merit. Where she did weigh the substance, she wrote that she remained unpersuaded a case for actual innocence had been made. Stanislaus County District Attorney Jeff Logero called the petition recycled, repackaged, and rebranded arguments. The Los Angeles Innocence Project's deputy director, Hannah Brown, said the office disagreed with the ruling on every level. They didn't stop there. The Los Angeles Innocence Project has already said it will take the ruling to a higher court. A separate petition, the original juror misconduct claim, is still pending before the California Supreme Court, moving on its own track. At CrimeCon 2026, Peterson's original trial attorney, Mark Geragos, took the stage to say what he said for 2 decades, that no one understood the evidence in this case in real time better than he did, and that his position on Peterson's innocence has never moved. A prosecutor who says the science was always sound, a defense that says the science was always wrong, a judge who says the law won't let her decide which one is right, not yet. 2 paths remain open: the California Court of Appeal, where the 14 denied claims are headed next, and the California Supreme Court, where the juror misconduct petition already sits. Scott Peterson is 52 years old. He has spent more than half his adult life in a cell over a case with no crime scene, no weapon, and his lawyers now argue no date they can prove. A jury convicted a man in 2004 with the evidence they had. Not the evidence anyone wished they had, the evidence that existed. They weighed an affair, a fishing trip, a hair color, a life insurance policy, and they decided it added up to murder. 22 years later, an organization built to find wrongful convictions looked at the same file and said the foundation was false. A judge looked at their argument and said the law wouldn't let her reopen it, not that it was wrong, only that it came too late, through the wrong door. That distinction between false and too late to reconsider is where this case actually lives now, not in guilt or innocence, in whether the system that convicted Scott Peterson is built to correct itself, or only to defend what it already decided. Laci Peterson was 27. She had 6 weeks left before she would have met her son. Connor Peterson never had a first day outside his mother. Whatever happened between them on December 23, 2002, or the 24th, or whichever day the science finally settles on, it has never been proven the way the law is supposed to require. 2 courts still have to decide if that's enough to matter. If this case made you think, say so in the comments. The next full breakdown is already up.